Prologue, released July 27, 2021 by developer Repulse and publisher SZH in both VR and flat, and I dropped a review for it back in 2022. And on February 14, 2024, the long-awaited full release dropped for Iragon, priced at $25.99 Canadian. I was fortunate enough to grab this one on a deep sale for just $1.29, a 95% discount. My expectations for Iragon's full release were very high, through the roof actually, because I'm always interested in seeing how well a developer is able to pull off adult-only content in a video game with actual substance and value. Lust for Darkness VR did a decent job, and perhaps a few others, but a wise man once said, disappointments come from unrealistically high expectations. And I'm ever so disappointed with Iragon. Watch Season 12 of The Lab Video Game TV, coming soon to Flow One in 25 Caribbean countries. Visit the website at thelabvideogametv.com or reach out at contact@thelabvideogametv.com. Download the Flow Sports app to watch us on the go. Check out the Lab Video Game TV's gaming news, Thursdays at 4 p.m. during the Sage Projects on Ontario's Island Radio, 101.3 FM and CJAI.ca. Now, let's talk Iragon.
I'd rather not talk about it now.
The prologue, the demo really, showed so much promise. It genuinely seemed like the developers were making an adult-only experience with quality, and as much of a contradiction as that may seem, as much as that statement may leave you scratching your head wondering, why on earth would you think that? Well, hear me out. The prologue painted a picture of a VR RPG adventure experience with a story that may actually go somewhere. A deep RPG system along with some really good gameplay mechanics, but apparently the developers shot their load in the prologue.
Great.
And what the prologue had to offer was as good as it got.
Where do we go from here?
To be quite honest, Iragon would have been better off left in development hell, having everyone say, remember this VR game that was supposed to come out named Iragon? It was shaping up really well and looked like some truly groundbreaking stuff. Yes, Iragon would have been better off left a memory of what could have been, because the actual game in no way expands on the prologue where growth and quality are concerned.
I can never go back.
On Steam, this game sits at mixed, and personally, I believe that is an overly generous rating. Who knows? Maybe the flat version had some redeeming qualities, but I doubt it, and I'm not about to go replay this experience to find out.
What happened here?
I've read where several people say the experience is short, but for me, it went on way too long. It outstayed its welcome way before the end credits rolled. Iragon is worth no more than the discount price I paid. So thanks to the publisher for said discount.
What's done is done.
There are some who criticize this game, giving it a thumbs down because closer to launch, the developers decided to axe the 100% X-rated content. And I'm not concerned with that, as believe it or not, I play these adult-rated games not for the reason of seeing some cartoon sex scenes, but to see what the devs did creatively within the genre. Most so far, with games like Seed of the Dead, continue to fail miserably at impressing me. But like I said, there are a few, like Lust for Darkness, who are at least headed in the right direction. What I'm getting at regarding some of the bad reviews this game got is, these things are not the problem. The problem is, Iragon feels like devs had a great idea, like they had a passion for said great idea, but either ran out of interest, time, money, ideas, and skill, or all of the above. The game feels like at some point the developers just gave up and squeezed out a turd onto Steam, figuring to themselves, hey, let's cut our losses and move on.
I know a place where we'd be safe. Getting there is not going to be easy.
We'll get through it.
The story of Iragon. I'll be mentioning over and over in this review the prologue, because were it not for said impressive demo, brimming with potential, I wouldn't have reviewed it, and I certainly wouldn't be creating this updated review either. I would have simply tossed Iragon aside, like most of the adult-rated games I have in my Steam library, as just more X-rated cash grabs. In the prologue, Iragon's story, although convoluted then, had promise. Because it was just a demo, or prologue, call it what you will. I knew there was room and time for improvements. However, the story did not improve. The story turned out to be what I expected Iragon to rise above. Cheap porn trash. The story is idiotic, senseless, and tossed together as one would expect from watching a porn flick. To hell with the story, get to the TNA. Nothing about the story makes sense. It feels like a group of people who had no communication with each other, each wrote a part of the story, then all these parts were just randomly joined together. There's no rhyme or reason to any of this. You keep playing while getting these bits and pieces, figuring it'll somehow come together eventually, but it never does. There's really no explanation to anything. You're this nobody peasant who somehow, after a simple tutorial, has the ability to cast spells and fight off all kinds of warriors and monsters. There's no logical explanation to how in the first 30 minutes of the game you elevated from zero to hero with any prior history in the arts of combat or magic. You were looking for a job, just about any job, and you end up escorting this strange lady shrouded in secrecy to find her parents. And you know what? It's best you just get this game for yourself and see if you can somehow do a better job of figuring out this disjointed mess than I did.
You look like you just crawled out of your mother. Whatever. Job is yours.
Over in sound, the audio is not so good, not so bad. The opening theme song, as cheesy as it is, sounds fine. The singer has good vocals. The ambiance sounds, atmospheric music are done well enough. The sound effects are good, but many times out of sync, and I also experienced many audio glitches and inconsistencies. The voice acting wasn't very good.
A low-life, low-class, middle-of-fucking-nowhere shithole? If I got anything out of Grass Point, it was pussy. And it wasn't even good pussy.
If you're a fan of anime, you may beg to differ. However, while I've watched some pretty good anime, like Crying Freeman and Ninja Scroll, most anime I've watched has very mediocre voice acting. Maybe it's because I'm not a fan of the culture, but the voice actors seem to go way overboard with the dialogue, and it just seems generally unrealistic and overly dramatic. And there's a lot of that here. The protagonist, Derek, is the main offender. While he doesn't sound like he's overacting, he has this single tone throughout the entire game, where regardless of what the scene is, the situation he's in, the mood he should be conveying, he always has the same drab, dull, uninterested tone.
We went into this tavern, but they were waiting for us. Tons of them. She burned the whole place down with magic.
That's not possible.
The visuals. For most part, I love the visuals here. The cel-shaded anime look was done very well. One of the first things that grabbed me from the prologue, actually. The environments are detailed for most parts. Some fall flat, but for most part, the environments get a pass. Same for the weapon details, character designs, and particle effects. There's a lot of clipping throughout, and collision detection issues. There are NPCs who you can interact with. You can touch ladies' breasts, but not other parts, which among other things, breaks immersion. The full game, although filled with bugs, does seem better optimized than the prologue though. Over in gameplay, on startup, you've got audio settings, language, gameplay, and VR settings. The glitches and bugs I mentioned begin here, unfortunately. I'll turn off subtitles and turn on censored mode, but after a restart, these settings go back to default. So I have to keep doing this every time I start it up. Then the height calibration. You have the option to calibrate your height at the beginning, but this does absolutely nothing. This here is perhaps the most immersion-breaking part of the entire experience. Your character many times, perhaps most times, is either too short or towering over everyone he's talking to during the cutscenes. And this is odd, as I was always under the impression Iragon was designed as a VR experience first, then flat. In the start menu, you could also choose to enter the galleries of sorts. Hall of Heroes, which allows you to view and interact with the good guys, or girls I guess, of Iragon, and Monster Girls exhibition for the bad girls. And by view and interact with, I mean on a virtual sexual level. More of the mature-rated sexual content here includes the female characters losing parts of their clothes during battle as they take damage. Now, here's where I expand on my disappointment. The irony with Iragon is, it's neither a tasteless X-rated game, or is it a tastefully done X-rated game. It falls in a place I didn't even realize existed before now. An awkward middle ground, and this is not a good place to be. It feels like the developers couldn't decide on what they wanted Iragon to be, and just gave us this.
Get to the point.
Having porn-like scenes in a game is fine if done with substantial purpose. Even if said purpose is comedy. House Party proved this, but the sex in Iragon simply adds to the C-movie porn nature of the game. It literally comes off as something out of a porn movie.
Wanna teach this bad girl some manners?
Like a woman pulling up at a gas station and having sex with the pump attendant. Now, an avid porn viewer may say, what's wrong with that? But I don't watch porn. If you haven't watched my other reviews on games in this genre, you may ask, if you don't watch porn, then why are you playing X-rated video games? Go watch my other videos. I can't keep explaining this several times in every review. I expected this to be a deep adult VR RPG with substance and purpose beyond satisfying perversion. Yes, I do believe that is possible.
Are you willing to die trying?
I was, but now I'm thinking spending time with the two of you together could be so much more exciting.
Iragon turned out to be a casual game along the lines of Seed of the Dead. Really casual. The RPG mechanics, much like the story, is also thrown together and serves very little purpose. You can find weapons in hidden chests throughout the levels, but 90, maybe 99% of these weapons are basically useless or do the same damage with inaccurate stats. I found one weapon that looked to have decent stats early in the game and never found another one stronger. There's a vendor, but this vendor does not sell weapons. There is a skill tree progression system that's really bare bones and gets locked very early in. So whatever path on this tree you choose is what you're stuck with, and it's a very limited path. The abilities you get from this skill tree aren't very impressive or effective either. Following the casual nature of Iragon, the difficulty is also mostly easy. It ramps up on some encounters and boss fights, but is generally easy. And the bosses, they look good, but the fights are poorly designed and can usually be won with a cheap exploit.
Why? You think you're so untouchable.
One of the first major glitches I experienced was with the first boss, the Spider Lady. I lost the first encounter, and when I continued from the checkpoint, I had no weapons or spells to use. Then, no matter how many times I restarted, my weapons wouldn't return. This brings me to another issue. I had to go back to the title screen. But because checkpoints aren't really save points in Iragon, once you end the game, you won't resume at your last checkpoint. You'll have to do the entire level from scratch. Let me get on to some more oddities and bugs. You can't sheathe your weapon. You take your sword, axe, hammer, or whatever out, and when you're done with it, your only option is to drop it to the ground. Again, immersion breaking and tacked together gameplay mechanics. You're given choices throughout your journey, but I will not pass any judgment here, as I have absolutely no interest in replaying this to find out what would have happened should I have made a different choice.
Please, come with me. I've got no one else.
I suspect nothing much would have changed other than learning something about the other three female characters' motivations. But I chose this lady here, and I couldn't make heads or tails of her story, and I highly doubt I was simply unfortunate enough to pick the one character with a garbage story and the other three ladies had some epic tales to share. No, I strongly suspect the same nonsense, regardless of which girl or path I chose. Feel free to let me know if you played through this and experienced differently.
I swear, if someone asks me one more time today,
Your melee weapons not only lack substance and variety, but where collision detection is concerned, they also feel weightless. And when hitting an enemy or object, there's this pervading hit or miss feeling to it, regardless of how well you aimed at your desired target. Same goes for the spells. You have 3 types to choose from based on the element you originally chose, and you're eventually locked to that element and then locked to a path on the skill tree for that element. My spells would miss their intended target many times or just fail to cast. Along your journey, you're able to hire the merchant, the same merchant you come across each time between stages, by the way, but you're able to hire her to tag along. Your AI companions, however, are pretty useless for most part. And other than the fact that the main objective of Iragon is to escort this lady to her parents, which you never find, by the way, you end up feeling like a glorified babysitter, as these ladies, who are supposed to be a bunch of badasses, are always falling, crying out for assistance and needing a revive. If you don't revive them, they end up reviving anyway, so them calling out for an assist just gets irritating after a while, like a mosquito in your ear.
Derek, I need you.
And combat and the overall gameplay experience becomes so repetitive. So much more of the same basic casual elements that completing this experience became a slog. But sure, the parts where you aren't fighting, where the game slows down and makes an attempt at storytelling, is also pointless. You have conversations with NPCs, which should be an integral part of the story, but nothing they say makes sense. Nothing they tell you leads to any kind of revelation, instructions, or direction. Let me be clear. Take this, for example. In an RPG or adventure experience, an NPC may say, go talk to this person, get this item, then go to this location, and then this will happen. There's nothing like that. Even the random NPCs you meet in towns along your journey give you no side quests, no relevant info. It's just filler. Nothing links to anything here. This game is one huge charade. It's a casual adults-only rated game, poorly disguised as an RPG. It's really just an empty shell.
Did you loot and burn down my house over 5 years ago and ran away with my man?
5 years. You must be really bad at your job.
Maybe I could put a bounty on your head and we could find out.
There's another really weird thing about Iragon, where the VR experience is concerned. I played it seated once, simply because of what I mentioned earlier about the faulty height calibration. And while playing seated, for the first in a long time, I got nauseous.
Get to the point.
Let me wrap this up. Iragon was one of those experiences high up there on my list of most highly anticipated releases. The Prologue hung its hat real high, far outside its reach. I expected something groundbreaking. I'm not saying I expected perfection or a masterpiece, but I literally expected Iragon to break ground in its genre.
Have you ever felt like there was more to life? Like you were destined for something greater?
No.
I like mature content. I'm not talking about porn. I prefer games of a mature nature, where things I know take place in real life are well represented. It doesn't have to be realistic. It can be fictitious. But themes such as sex, graphic violence, and language, topics which are deemed taboo and inappropriate and offensive, like the stuff I experienced in one of my all-time favorite games, Mafia 3. They pulled very few punches in the racism department. That's what I want to see in games. I do not need anything sugar-coated. I'm not asking for gratuitous, senseless violence and graphic sex scenes to fulfill some morbid, perverted curiosity. There's a right way to pull off the content I'm looking for. Games like Lust for Darkness came the closest so far. Iragon, no.
Give me a break.
Watch Season 12 of The Lab Video Game TV, coming soon to Flow On in 25 Caribbean countries. Visit the website at thelabvideogametv.com. Reach out at contact@thelabvideogametv.com. Download the Flow Sports app to watch us on the go. Check out The Lab Video Game TV's gaming news, Thursdays at 4 p.m. during the Sage Projects on Ontario's Island Radio, 101.3 FM and cjai.ca. Thank you for watching. If you like my content, feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Let's say on the other hand, though, I found a way to piss you off with this one. Then, my friend, the logical course of action would be to dislike, unsub, and perhaps leave a feisty comment voicing your disdain and displeasure. No worries either way, I won't hold it against you. Our game is never over.
You stupid cunt!